Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. Welcome to this episode of the Flower Lounge. I could not be more thrilled. I can feel the excitement in my body. I'm so excited to have this guest with us. Christiane Northrup, an MD, board-certified OBGYN, former assistant clinical professor of OBGYN at the University of Vermont College of Medicine, New York Times best-selling author, a visionary pioneer in women's health. And after decades on the front lines of her profession as a practicing physician in obstetrics and gynecology, she is now dedicating her life to helping women truly flourish by learning how to enhance all that can go right with their bodies. Dr. Northrup is a leading proponent of medicine that acknowledges the unity of mind, body, emotions, and spirit. Internationally known for her empowering approach to women's health and wellness, she teaches women and many men how to thrive at every stage of life and encourages them to create health on all levels by tuning into their inner wisdom. As a business owner, physician, former surgeon, mother, writer, and speaker, Dr. Northrup acknowledges our individual and collective capacity for growth, freedom, joy, and balance. She is also thrilled with her company, Amata, whose name is derived from the Thai words for ageless and eternal. This company is devoted to creating and distributing products that contribute to vibrant health and well-being throughout the life cycle. You can find those at amatalife.com. And when she's not traveling, Dr. Northrup loves devoting her leisure time to dancing Argentine tango. We need to talk about that. Staying fit through Pilates, resistance stretching, going to the movies, getting together with friends and family, potluck dinners, boating, process painting, and reading. I love it. Thank you so much for being here with us.
What a pleasure. Yes. Your products are everywhere I go. My Pilates teacher, when I'm done with a session, we always do a little spray. She does that for everybody.
Aww.
And my esthetician has your products. So they're just sort of all over in my life. So we're always with you.
That's so sweet. I love it.
Yeah.
We always start every episode with this little exercise. So
Okay.
Getting comfortable, close your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And go back to a time in your childhood when you played around flowers or plants or trees.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about what you were doing and who you were with. And if you can identify a favorite flower or botanical.
Yeah.
And then the 3 words that you would use to describe its personality. And then whenever you're ready, you can just tell us everything you're thinking of, your favorite, and the 3 words.
Okay. So the favorite flower is Lily of the Valley. The scent was intoxicating, delicate, harbinger of spring.
I love that. So
yeah.
what we find is that typically the words you would use to describe your favorite from childhood would describe you and your deepest essence and how you bring your gifts into the world. So intoxicating, delicate, and a harbinger of spring. That's beautiful.
Nice. Love that.
Yeah, and you have a new book that's launching today, right?
Yes, today. Yeah.
Today. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
You've had so many works of art over the years. What led you to writing this book?
This book came about because I was doing a divine love meditation with Diane Grover, who was my first nurse and with whom I've worked for 36 years. And we do this divine love meditation as a way to shepherd our business. And during the meditation, she's very intuitive, and a body worker that I was working with, who's very eccentric, came to her and she says to me after our 2 minutes, okay, this guy came in and he's a schmeagle. And I go, what is a schmeagle? She goes, it's like Gollum in The Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
And she saw him kind of hiding in the bushes in my house. And he had written me an email that he was going to come up in the summer and kidnap me and take me back to wherever he was. And I was beginning to see parts of his character that I was iffy about. And then with Diane, we looked back over the years, and because she's worked with me for so long, we saw a series of people who had taken a lot of my energy and who I finally had to cut relationships with. Mm-hmm. And this was sort of the final one. I had my own Harvey Weinstein even. I had a guy I was working with in the Amada business, and I thought he was absolutely essential because he'd gone all over the world and he knew how to do this, and I had no idea how to do this.
Right.
You know, at one point he told me we needed to go to Copenhagen. It was the middle of the winter. He puts me up in the bridal suite of the hotel, which was where he had his honeymoon. Hello, this is a little odd. And another time I'm out in California just to do some business, and I'm in the shower and he opens the shower curtain and he's shaving, and it's like, oh yeah. And so if a person has not been around this kind of energy vampire, this is what the culture says, what they say is, well, why did she, whatever, why didn't they say something? I've had so much experience with these characters, but there's a poster that someone sent me on Instagram, and it's a picture of a guy with a shotgun in front of his cabin, and it says, if you line up all of your ex-lovers, you will see a graph of your mental illness. Now, it doesn't need to be ex-lovers. It can be business associates, it's whatever, but I realized that I had personally a pattern of using my life energy to assist people in reaching their full potential. The problem was they didn't do half as much as I did to reach their potential. And years ago, we did not even have the term narcissism except for the myth of Narcissus. In my psych rotations and all of that, I realized there was a certain group of person called a borderline personality disorder and all of this. And at any given time, 25% of my practice was this kind of person. It's this, help me, you can't.
Right.
And they would come in and they would say, oh, thank God I found you. No one else can heal me. And then I would impale myself on that hook over and over. Now, why is that? Because in my family of origin, I was completely the black sheep. They were all into sports. So being academically successful, being a musician, maybe that too. I was very interested in that stuff. They're angels. I read all of Edgar Cayce at the age of 12. Everyone else is out climbing mountains. You know, their idea of a fun day is that, you know, like a 5-sport day, if we could golf, play tennis, climb a mountain, ski, you know, whatever. And they said to me, you know, my dad, we noticed a tendency in you early on to want to sit by the fire and read books. And then the natural extension of that is, and having seen that natural tendency in you, we are going to do everything in our power to take you away from your essence and make you become a ski racer or whatever, all of that to please the family ethos. So what happens when you're like this, when you have that childhood where you don't fit in really?
Right.
You look for love in all the wrong places, because instead of understanding that I had light gifts and talents that were God-given, I thought of myself as not enough, unlovable, flawed. And so you begin to work for love. You think you have to earn love. So the truth is, the book is about how do you heal the empathic inner child who's been misunderstood for a lifetime in the culture. Now, that is not as true anymore. Matt Kahn, the healer Matt Kahn, says, you know, we are born into families and we think that to be liked by them, we have to be like them. And I was never like them. And so you get the idea that something's wrong with you. And frankly, I think my entire career in OBGYN was just an attempt to heal my own birth and my relationship with my mother. So let's be totally clear about that. Now, is there a whole lot of data that applies to everyone? Yes, the most personal stories that we tell are the most universal. So here I am, and I'm trying to practice a new type of medicine. I'm seeing a missing piece, the emotions, the childhood, the energy of that.
Right.
And nobody in my profession can see that, because the medical profession is pretty much run by drugs and surgery and the Newtonian model. So we don't see the energetic model. We don't see how beliefs play into it. One thing I did get from my family that I will forever be grateful for is my dad was a medical rebel. He was a dentist. His brother and sister were medical doctors. And he believed you could tell someone's health through looking in their mouth. We grew up on the work of Weston Price, organic food.
Wow.
And I had a brother signed out of the hospital against medical advice because the doctors didn't know what was wrong with him. In this day and age, my parents would have been reported to Health and Human Services. Luckily, they took him out of the hospital and he lived. If he had stayed, he would have died. So I learned early on, way early on, that there was a missing piece, and that this needed to be spoken of, and that doctors didn't know everything. This book was finally prompted by putting that all together, seeing all these women with mystery diseases, autoimmune, like, why is this cellular inflammation happening? I mean, I watched all these people with perfect diets. They'd kill themselves with yoga and perfect diets and green juice and homeopathy and you name it, and they would still get sick. And I found that in every case, there's an energy vampire in their life who's literally draining their life energy, because an energy vampire tends to be incredibly manipulative, charming, and they make you feel bad about yourself so that you keep giving. And then every now and then they give you a crumb. So for instance, back to the body worker, the Schmeagol, the Gollum in Lord of the Rings, he would hold out the hook. We can develop you. I think we can develop you. I think that, if you come here, I see some things about you that need to be fixed, and we can do that. And that's very appealing because he can see, they have malignant intuition, the parts of me, the unhealed parts. So he's telling me what I desperately want to hear and then giving me the solution, until finally I realize, wait, I'm promoting him beyond belief. I won't give the details, but all that to say, when I realized, oh my gosh, this man is not here for me. And he's like the Wizard of Oz, pay no attention to the man behind the screen. And since then, we have Wild Wild Country, the Rajneesh documentary on Netflix, and I've been around enough ashrams to see the sexual abuse of the gurus, and basically every chance that we have to give our power away, to not see the divine in ourselves, sets us up for an energy vampire relationship. So they're born with superior egos. They think they're the hottest piece of shit that ever hit the planet, and you're supposed to serve them. And empaths are born with inferior egos. That we feed our inferior ego by looking for things to improve about ourselves. So energy vampires are 1 in 5 people. If you Google cluster B, you'll see what the psychiatric terms are, but please remember, it's a spectrum. So there's a few people with narcissistic traits, and then at the other end of the spectrum is the outright psychopath. That's Harvey Weinstein. These are people with no conscience. It's 1 in 25 people, meaning there are 100,000 in New York City alone. They often operate under the radar. They're usually, when we hear the term psychopath, we think, oh, a psychopathic killer. No. These are the people who con women into, handing over their life savings. And they can be charming, usually 2 years. They can pour on the charm and the love bombing for 2 years. And then after that, things start to fall apart. And then the minute you call it like you see it, they tend to ramp it up, the love bombing, and I'll never do that again, and that kind of thing. And the world has been run by these characters for the past 5,000 years, and now we're in a time where the light is winning. And so the book is Because here's what it is. You think you've been chosen by one of these good-looking, charismatic people. You've been targeted. You haven't been chosen. You've been targeted. They tell you everything you've been desperate to hear. They use a sob story. There's a certain kind of empath with super traits. And we are resourceful, loyal, healthy, stick-to-itiveness. We have optimism. These are innate traits. Sandra Brown has done the studies on this. It's like as innate as your eye color. And though you see the red flags, you think they don't apply to you. Why? Because you can see the soul of the person. You can see their potential.
Oh, God.
And I know, right?
Oh,
and then you
God,
keep
no.
giving. I know. And then you keep giving because you think that, and in every other area of your life, you can have a major impact, but not with this person. So what Sandra Brown's research found is these women were not codependent, relationship addict, learned helplessness. These were CEOs, federal judges, women who were on it, except in their intimate relationships.
Mm.
And so that's what this book is about, is coming home to yourself. And there are many, 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 many men who've been in relationship with borderline women who are like dried husks on the side of the road. They've just had because men want to please women, but these people you can't please. There's an abyss inside. No matter what you do, it's not enough. And then they blame you for it. And we empaths are very, very sensitive people. So we are very susceptible to what Melanie Tonya Evans calls CRAP. And I love this acronym. She does narcissistic abuse recovery programs online that are wonderful. So this is CRAP. We're afraid of criticism, rejection, abandonment, punishment. And in our families of origin, when we told the truth, when we called it like we saw it, we have indeed been criticized, rejected, abandoned, punished. And that happens not only within your family, it happens within many professions. I was in Chile with Alberto Villoldo, who I adore, and we both laughed because he has lost 3 academic appointments at universities. Why? Because he's talking about consciousness. And he's, you get to the point. I lost a professorship at the University of Vermont when I wrote The Wisdom of Menopause, because you're not supposed to talk like this. We don't believe in quantum energy. What you're doing, flower essences, how could this energy of a plant that you put in water have any effect whatsoever? There's nothing in here, right? And so that flies in the face of what society believes to be true. And remember also the old soul empaths, the ones of us who've been here over and over and over, we've been burned at the stake for this stuff. So you come in a little bit scared, a little thin-skinned. Oh my God, are they going to get me this time? And it's interesting how fearful we can be. Like, are there places where you can't talk about flower essences, astrology, metaphysics, past lives? I mean, I didn't bring that up at board meetings in the hospital, ever. But I've always been interested in it. But this you didn't talk about, right? You don't talk about that. Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And I think we forgot to mention I forgot to mention the title. I just ordered it on Amazon. It's called Dodging Energy Vampires, an Empath's Guide to Evading Relationships That Drain You and Restoring Your Health and Power.
Yeah.
And so you just started seeing a pattern of women who were following every healthy regime in their life. And when you dug further, you would find that they had at least one relationship that was draining them.
Yeah. And, and I was exhibit A personally, because I had the whole, I would look at so the relationships that were like, this is 30 years relationship. And then I would look at my own health and see the graph. So, so we've got one that's lasting, let's say 30, 40 years. And then this next one is 24 years. And then this one's 12 years. And then this one's 3 years. And so each time you see the pattern, I woke up sooner. And in working with Dr. George Simon, who wrote really the Bible on this, called In Sheep's Clothing, about character disorder, he said one of the joys of his work has been helping people get out of these relationships sooner, because usually what happens is you keep thinking, because you're so optimistic and you're so positive, you keep thinking that your energy will change them. And you might do 3 to 4 years in couples therapy. And if the couples therapist does not understand character disorder, it is the most invalidating thing you will ever go through, because all your friends think the vampire is absolutely charming. They never see the downside of it.
Right.
You feel completely invalidated. You get, heavier and heavier, or sicker and sicker. They look like $1 million because they're feeding on you. And so we've lived in a culture that only recently has seen this, because I went through psychiatric rotation in med school, and I would begin to notice that when there was a borderline on the psych unit, all the nurses would start to fight with each other, because one of their tactics is splitting. They pit people against each other, and then the well-meaning nurses, healers, empaths side. They believe the borderline, they side with them, and then start fighting with the person who is calling the behavior. So here's how that plays out for me on Facebook. I write about this, and invariably I get someone who says, you are labeling, they are human too, they need love too. Mm-hmm. All of that is very true. But each of us needs to love ourselves enough, care for ourselves enough, as Mary Oliver says in her wonderful poem, so that we can finally care for the only life that we have any control over. Save the only life we can save, which is ours, and that is our job. Now, Pisces, Chiron has just been in Pisces since 2010. It just left today, and that's been an 8-year postdoctoral training in the lower vibration of Pisces, martyrdom and self-sacrifice.
Right.
That's not what Pisces is. Compassion is not the same. But look, the church has taught us this. Alcoholic family systems teach us. If you take care of yourself, you're being selfish. Don't do what you want to do. Take care of me. You see, if you were a good daughter, you would come here every Sunday for dinner, but I notice you're not coming here. And that means you're not a good daughter. That's the whole definition, right, of good doctor, good daughter, or good son. I just heard it today. Someone's got a father who's a real pain in the ass. And she said, well, my brother wants to be a good son. Well, yeah, that good son means a sacrificing son. Yeah.
Right.
So it's hard. Listen, this is hard stuff. No one wants to hear this. And as people are listening, I know the names are going through their head. There isn't a person on the planet who doesn't have at least one of these people in their lives.
I actually have personally been through an experience of, it wasn't even a romantic relationship, but an experience of every time I was around this person, I literally my energy went to zero. Just like I couldn't get out of bed. Like,
yes. Or I've been at dinner with these people where I feel like I'm going to fall in the soup. Like literally, I visited a woman, I've got that story in the book, a very well-known person, in this gorgeous home. I couldn't stay awake. I thought I was going to fall asleep in the soup. I'm doing her astrologic chart. I'm doing tarot cards. I'm digging my nails in. I'm just trying to stay awake so that, just as social comportment, like you can't exactly fall asleep at lunch and excuse yourself. I was a guest at her place, and then a friend of mine who's an empath, the two of us had to sort of escape to the guest room to plan our escape from the weekend. We were there for the whole weekend. And I realized this is not going to work.
Oh my God.
This is not going to work. Yeah. So you pay attention to your body. Yeah.
I'm going to get really real here. So before I started like 2 decades ago, before I started working with in my flower essence business, I was a crisis counselor. And that experience that you're talking about, I had so many times, because we would, Maricopa County has a crisis line, and if they couldn't resolve it on the phone, they'd send us out. We'd go,
Oh,
a couple of
oh,
us would go into, under
yes.
bridges, into people's homes, into their energy. And sometimes I would be standing at the doorway and like every fiber of my body was like, do not go in that door. And
You got it.
and that was my job. So I would say a mantra and visualize myself as, and then walk inside. And I remember so often just like getting to that point of such incredible drowsiness.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is like, I mean, this may sound callous, but in that line of work, this might have been like the 10,000th time that this person is saying they want to kill themselves.
Oh, no, that's a borderline. Okay, we call them the frequent flyers at the hospital, and they will come in 260 times a year. Marsha Linehan wrote a book called DBT, Dialectic Behavioral Therapy for Borderline Personality Disorder. She's a world expert. And she has this system where they say, I think I'm going to kill myself. And here's Marsha. Here's what she says. So why don't you? Stops them dead in their tracks. So why don't you?
It's actually a really good method.
Yeah. Because, and now here's the problem.
Only for that particular type of personality.
No. They have to, but it's ridiculous.
Right.
They have to, because the system cannot handle this burden.
Right.
And then what would happen is, as soon as they get admitted to the hospital, they want to kill themselves. They come in with a big teddy bear. And then as soon as they get admitted to the hospital, they're ordering the nurses' staff around and telling you what kind of dinner they want. And the steak needs to be rare, please.
I always just figured for a certain amount of clients that I had at that time that it felt to me almost like there were spirits also around.
I think that's absolutely true. When I worked with Peter Calhoun, the late Peter Calhoun, a shaman, he said that very often with alcoholics, there's a spirit attachment, and that needs to be removed because that's the entity that's calling for the alcohol, which, by the way, alcohol comes from the Arabic word, which means life-sucking spirit. So I think, I know it's scary for people to delve into this area, but you're talking about something that's absolutely real. I have a friend who does exorcisms, and she said, you don't ever want to go in there yourself. You send in Archangel Michael, and then, he does it for you. You're right.
I mean, I think it's, for some people, it may be a little bit of a wild topic, but also it can give comfort just knowing that when you experience a certain type of phenomenon, that it's not you're not a bad person. So like there would be certain clients I had who, after being in that profession for almost 2 years, I knew when someone was possessed. You just know because you immediately become extremely irritated.
Yeah.
And that's, even if that's not your nature, it's like some part of you innately knows that something has taken over and that's wrong. It's not right.
So then here's the question.
Right.
Whose job is it to take care of that?
Well, it's the host.
Right.
It wouldn't be my job.
That's it. Now, so this is the most important, and I talked at length with Dr. George Simon about this. He said, here's the key. They have to want to change.
Right.
Because you can't make the host get rid of the entity. They have to want to do it. Right. Now, they can ask for help to want to do it, but they have to want to. And he said, how do you know that someone is going to change? He said, they have to experience contrition. Contrition means broken into a million pieces. They don't like who they see when they look in the mirror, and then they change, but you don't have to do a thing. It's incredibly rare, very rare, but he has seen it. He said, I've been in the field long enough to have had the privilege of seeing that. He said, it's usually people in their 60s. They don't change, and they say narcissists don't age well because they lose the youth. Youth is a great defense. And then the older they get, the harder it is to get the narcissistic supply. So then maybe they're going to change. My experience is I've seen that happen once in my entire career.
So you've only seen that happen once before?
Yeah, and it was with a woman whose husband is narcissistic. and she was ready to leave. So she had the apartment to leave. She was going to leave the house. And she meant it. She meant it. You can't decide you're going to leave and then pull back thinking that if you tell him you're going to leave, he'll change. No, you have to be done. Like, you're done. You're done. If he changes, great. But then it's the ball's in his court to prove to you that it's a permanent change. So anyone who's dealing with this, you need to find a therapist who understands personality disorder. So this is vampires. It's a character disorder. They don't do the right thing. They do the thing that is expedient, that brings them fame, fortune, money, and looking good. Their primary value is to look good. So a friend of mine was married to one, and during the divorce proceedings, she wanted to get him to agree to paying half the daughter's college tuition. She said, I knew how I had to do it. I had to get my dad involved so that he would say in front of my father that he would pay, because the father was a doctor, a pillar of the community. This guy wanted to look good in front of the father figure. It was the only way. If she hadn't had her father as a witness, they lie, they cheat, they go back on their word. If you're co-parenting with one, or parallel parenting is what it's called, you can be sure they will change the agreement. They will renege on their responsibilities. They will change the vacation schedule. They'll do all that. So Melanie Tonya Evans suggests, if you're in that situation, you use an app called Family Wizard. And what that does, the Family Wizard, you put down your plan and you can't change it in the app. So once you put it in there, it's there. So you can use this as some kind of an instrument in court, because many, many times these people run the court system, they run the medical system, they make you feel crazy. So your job always with these people is to assume your own sovereignty over your own energy. And it takes practice, it takes healing that inner child, it takes boundaries, it takes learning to say no. So at least you can say, here's what you say instead of no. Let me get back to you. I simply can't, or it's not possible. Because what an empath will do, we want to be loved and we want to uplift the situation. So we'll often say yes when we're asked. We'll say yes when we really mean no. Our bodies will say no. So you got to practice. Let me get back to you, or I simply can't, or it's not possible. And then you have to deal with feeling bad that you said no until you get to the point where you know who you're dealing with. And after a while, they'll stop asking. If you're married to one and you finally get out, the most shocking thing that happens is that this person you've loved for maybe 30 years will be re-engaged and remarried usually within a year and a half.
Wow.
It's shocking. It's shocking. And then you say to yourself, wait, did he ever really love me? And remember, what's the myth of Narcissus? He fell in love with his own image in the pool. So no, he never really loved you, because, he's really incapable of that kind of love. Or she, yeah.
So, there's as you were saying, there's a range, that you can have the really extreme and the more minute. Can you talk a little bit more about the dynamic from both sides? What's happening there?
The dynamic is the empath is the donor of energy, narcissistic supply. And the energy vampire feeds on narcissistic supply. The energy vampire sees the goodwill and the super traits of the empath, plays on those. Like, my wife won't let me see the children ever since our divorce, or I'm so lonely, or I've been looking for a woman like you my whole life, or anything like that. They'll use a sob story to get you hooked. Now, a person without the super traits who sees the red flags, when a person starts with the sob story, they'll just walk away. Oh my God, what a loser. The empath will think, oh my, how can I help? And because we have so many tricks in our bag, I mean, my depth of knowledge about omega-3 fats, molecular hydrogen, fascia hydration is vast, vast.
Right.
So when I've got someone in front of me, I know how to help.
Right. Right.
But if the other person doesn't really want to get well, I'm doing all the work.
They're just using that story to hook you.
That's right. So what we say is, you haven't been chosen. You feel chosen because they're so charismatic. You haven't been chosen, you've been targeted. And once you understand that you've been targeted, so remember, the empath is born with an inferior ego. Therefore, it's easy for someone to manipulate us by saying, you're not doing enough. If you loved me, you would. I would love you better if you lost 10 pounds. Sally down the street is a size 8, you're a size 10. Or the big one, if you're really spiritual, you're not doing your life's mission. So, okay, so these are all the cons, because what is an empath really? And in the last section of the book, I talk about this. We are here to be the light. That's it. We are human air purifiers. We uplift a situation by being there. We don't have to do anything else, just by being there.
Right.
So it's not about doing more for others.
Right.
It's actually about doing less for them, doing more for yourself. So what I say now to somebody, a great night of close embrace Argentine tango with my community in Portland, Maine, is my response to the Syrian crisis. Why? Because it uplifts in a quantum way that energy, or as Lee Carroll says, it only takes 0.5% of people to raise their vibration to change the entire collective. So it's not our job to go out and save humanity. It's our job to raise our consciousness. And you do that by loving yourself. Hardest job on the planet.
So in terms of loving yourself and working through some of your inner child wounding, what are some of the practices that you've engaged in to do that?
Many, 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 and I've got all the techniques in the book, but one of them that I really have loved is an imprint removal. It's very shamanistic imprint removal. And the imprint removal is a fast way to heal. So here's how it's done. You feel in your body where it is that the energy is stuck. And generally that's in your guts, in your solar plexus. You're feeling bad about something. And you have the person in front of you who you've been holding resentment, or who you can't quite get over, or whatever. So let's say, it's your mother. So you say, first of all, you bring in Archangel Michael and his cobalt blue sword of light, and you cut any cord that might be connecting you, an energetic cord. Those cords are always below the belt to that person. And so you ask that archangel to cut those cords, or you have someone do it for you. I call this the surgical prep and drape, because I've actually done these imprint removals on my radio show, and it's very effective. And so then you're literally getting the operating field clean. Then the person imagines the energy vampire, let's say, sitting in front of them. And you go, Mom, I forgive you for, and then you let them have it. Now, this is where the empaths have trouble, because we have been taught that it is not spiritual to be angry, and it's not spiritual to use 4-letter words. And we've got some research on 4-letter words that they're very effective, especially the F word, for this therapeutic intervention, not for the general, cocktail conversation.
Right.
So, Mom, I forgive you for, making me feel that I was worthless, whatever. And then you really work up some emotion, because that's the only way you're going to heal it. And then at the end of that, you go, and I send you on your path of healing. So remember, this is not condoning what was done to you.
Mm-hmm.
It is freeing yourself from the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Then, when you're done with that, then you go to yourself, and I forgive myself for believing that I was less than, for spending 20 years trying to prove my worth or whatever it is, you know? And then the question is asked, are you ready to transmute this pattern? So once you've gotten the emotional charge out of your body, you then bring in the violet flame of Saint Germain, and you sit in the violet flame. And when I'm doing an imprint removal on someone, I can always see that the perpetrator does one of three things. Yeah. They'll jump into the flame in celebration. Thank you. Thank you. I see that, you know, as the person who came into this lifetime to wear the black hat, I see that you've got the message and I celebrate with you. So they really, really care. And they jump into the violet flame. Another one they do is they will get on their knees and weep for their part of it. Now I'm seeing this all in my mind's eye.
Right.
And then, but most of them run for the hills. The minute you're onto them, you're bringing in this divine, the violet flame, they run for the hills, because divine love, real love, is a toxin to a toxic person. So if you want to really help an energy vampire, send them divine love. Send them divine love. It's irritating to them. It's just irritating. It feels terrible. So I see them run for the hills. And then you ask the person who's having the imprint removal, when did you feel that energy shift? They literally will feel it shift. And then you pack where the imprint was. It's psychic surgery. So you pack it with midnight blue and golden light. You literally pack it. And because, again, as a surgeon, I've packed so many wounds, I know, you know, how to do it. And then you tell them, this is psychic surgery. You are apt to be very, very tired. So go rest. Mm-hmm. And that's a fast way to get a whole lot of work done. The other is the 7 Steps of Joy. That's in the book, where you go into a magic garden and you meet your inner child and you see what she's doing. And this one is the very first time you do it. It's a 40-day process. And if you miss one day, you got to start over. And I've done that over and over and over. I've done it with my divorced self. I've done it with, you know, my 13-year-old, but generally it's someone less than 10 years old who's been running. Okay, this is important. That inner child has been running your endocrine system, your immune system, and your central nervous system. And that's why the mystery illnesses. And a 7-year-old is not good at running your life. So you got to get them away from the wheel. And the way you do it is you, as the adult, as the divine self, you go in and you heal the inner child. And that's the path to God.
You said endocrine, and what were the other systems? Endocrine,
immune, and central nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally, and I learned this from Dr. Doris E. Cohen, who wrote a book called Repetition. And it's brilliant. There was a while there in the 80s, we had the, you know, take your inner child to work. And that's like ridiculous. No. What you do is you go into the magic garden, you heal that part of you, and then you take your leave and you come back to the present. You ground yourself in the present, but you grow up the inner child. But it's not, you're not letting her run your life, which you've been doing. Yeah.
And what I love about these exercises is that there isn't any blame involved. It's really about your inner child. It's not about somebody did something to you.
No, because here's what we know. Victimization, staying in the victim role, never works, but the victim has to be validated. And that's what the Me Too movement is about, and why I found the whole Harvey Weinstein thing so bracing. I was turning cartwheels in October. Why? Because it was the first time in my entire history that the mainstream validated women. In my practice in the 80s, women would sit down on the couch, they'd tell me their stories, they'd begin to cry. It was the first time they'd ever told a doctor, and it was completely connected with the suffering of their bodies in the organs that identified them as female. I saw that the practice of gynecology is the recognition of the wounding of the feminine in patriarchy. And I heard it all day long, and that's why I finally wrote Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, and had to invent a language of women's health. But my colleagues said, oh, you see all the nutcases. We only see normal women. You see all the crazy women. So that was what happened for me. So when the Harvey Weinstein thing hit, and then with the New York Times just winning a Pulitzer Prize for that reporting, it's like, finally, how the mighty have fallen, because they've held sway for centuries, where the women would be told you're making it up or whatever. So validation, this happened to you. That's what the Me Too movement is. But now where we all have to go, we cannot get stuck there.
Right.
We have to go into what's next. We have to go, Me Too, time's up, what's next? Or now what? And for me, dodging energy vampires is the now what? It's the what's next. You must do this work.
And when you've seen people go through these experiences and do these exercises and free themselves, what is typically the what's next now what? What do you see happening?
Oh, I see the best stuff. I see women finding true partnership, getting healthier, getting younger, laughing, looking at the whole thing and realizing that their best years are all ahead of them. I see complete rejuvenation because the body is more influenced by beliefs than any other factor. Age has nothing to do with it. All the stuff that we've been taught about what's supposed to happen as you go through time is nothing but a culturally shared trance. So I see women in their 70s finding the love of their lives. I see people, it's like Ebenezer Scrooge on Christmas morning. Oh my God, I'm not dead. I'm not dead. So, I see entire legacies in families change, but that's what I see after they've done the work. Let's talk about the nitty gritty incision and drainage of the abscess, because that's painful. Okay, it's painful.
Right.
What you're going to experience is you wake up, chances are good that the flying monkeys and the minions of the narcissist will begin to attack you. So all the brothers and sisters will gather around and gang up on you. So what you have to do is you cannot ask people to validate your reality with a narcissist. They are so clever. They're so good that they will do everything in their power to make you look bad. So do not try to convince your mutual friends, your children, your parents about your experience. You stand in your own power, and there's this thing called the time in between. And the time, which happened to be a great miniseries on Netflix, by the way, but it's also this time, it's between the energy vampire life and the brand new, you have the world as your oyster. So there's that time in between. And for me, that was the Chiron in Pisces 8-year time frame. It's not going to take anyone else as long because, and this is the Rupert Sheldrake morphogenic field work, and that is when one person wakes up, like when Roger Bannister ran the 4-minute mile, which was felt to be impossible. Suddenly everyone was running 4-minute miles all over. We are at the turning of the ages. This is a crucial time when people are really waking up. So what's going to happen with the Harvey Weinstein and the, Bill Cosby and all of them, the feminine is rising in men and women. Right. And this isn't people are not going to be able to get away with it like they did before. Let's just say that the tide has turned and it's on the side of the light worker. But do not try to get validated from the people who are still asleep. Just don't, they're not your people. The time in between is you finish this one, your new tribe hasn't quite shown up yet. Mm-hmm. So you got to really trust yourself during that time in between. And, one of the things I love about your business is whenever I get one of the flower essences, it's always an affirmation of this is going to, with the help of nature, this is going to help you up level your energy in this particular place. Yeah.
And how common is it that you see people sort of lose their footing in the between time and either rebound or find a similar situation
It's common.
Common.
It's common. Yeah. Because for many, it feels like home. You know, it's like, he's a good man. He doesn't beat me. They don't know how good it can be. It takes enormous courage to get out of this. And because for a while, if you've ever known any men who have a borderline mother or a borderline wife, they don't know what to do. And what they've said to me is, well, I have to go along with this, or she will make my life a living hell. And that's true. An energy vampire can make your life a living hell. So you just have to walk away. There's no reasoning. So you have to find the courage. The beauty of that, it's the old Anais Nin quote, which is that, at the time will come when it's more painful to stay than for the bud to open. It's more painful for the bud to stay closed than for it to open. And I think we are at that place for many women when they finally realize, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. And I believe that when you walk away, there's a great story about Tina Turner, the singer. And when she walked away from Ike, she had one dime. And he came up to her in the parking lot and was about to beat her. By then she was doing Buddhist mantras, Buddhist meditation. She looked at him. She said, okay, go ahead. Hit me. And when you call out an energy vampire, they're a paper tiger. They actually don't have any real strength because they're just an inflated balloon working on the energy of others. There's no real moral character at all.
Do you think they're conscious of that or not conscious?
They're not conscious, because to become conscious would be that they would have to face the fact that deep inside, somehow they hate themselves. No human would act like this. The problem that the empath has, we give them the benefit of the doubt. We think that they must feel like we do. They don't. And they'll get there. In the great grind of karma and human nature, everyone eventually becomes free. But it's not your job to die for their sins. That's the whole issue.
Jump in the water and then drown.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And what's the most subtle level you've seen this arise in relationships?
The subtle level is where...
Not something that you might see as a pathology. It's really subtle.
Okay. Yeah. The really subtle is, I'll give you an example. I had this happen to me with a family member, and I watched a family member being verbally abused by her husband. And I was just waking up in my own life to what was happening to women. This was in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't stand it, the way he was treating her. She had the emotional anesthetic sprayed on thick. So it was like she was in a bath of lidocaine ointment. And I said, you're asking me to watch this, and I can't watch this, because I didn't understand the dynamic. When a person is not ready, they're going to side with the abuser. That's Stockholm syndrome. And later, this was in the days of the dictaphone, I got a tape that he had dictated. And he sent it to me, and he was standing there with the family member, so she was listening. And he said, you have so much wisdom to share. You are so good, but you have no idea about my relationship with so-and-so. And then the fact that my own flesh and blood was standing there with him, allowing him to abuse me in a very disembodied voice. He was right up in his head, guy's a lawyer, right up in his head, taking my inventory. And I realized in that moment, wow, okay, this is a dynamic there that I'm going to I'm going to have to rise above this one because I don't want to lose this family member.
Right.
And so what I did was I called and I apologized. Now, I didn't apologize for the truth that I saw. I apologized for what I did about it because I wasn't willing to lose that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seemed, so it's still, it's gotten much better, but I still see, and we're all going to see this. One of the ways that you determine an energy vampire is, how do your friends feel about this person? How do your children feel about this person? Chances are really good that they've tried to tell you and you haven't listened, because there's some part of you that would rather be with this kind of person than face the devastation of being alone.
Right.
Alone. Yeah.
The crap, the criticism,
the crap,
rejection, abandonment,
punishment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so when you see people get out of these situations,
Mm-hmm.
they often have to have a time period where they face the pain of the crap, the CRAP.
Yes. Yes, and they doubt themselves. So one of the things that I tell people in the book, one of the things I teach them, is they need a reality check person. So I have a good friend, and she would text me while she was going through the divorce. She'd text me the tactics of the ex-husband, and because we've been hypnotized, we're in a trance. We don't trust ourselves. We've been talked out of our own innate wisdom years and years ago. When you're a little kid, I have a 2.5-year-old granddaughter. She will tell you what she likes and what she doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm doing something she doesn't like, she'll go, "Lulu, stop it." And I fall over laughing. So she's 2.5. I don't like this. I have this boundary and this is what I'm doing. But we've lost that long ago. So you need a support system of healthy people, because for a while, this is why, when you were working in that field you were working in, you'll notice that battered women will often go back over and over and over. One of my friends was battered in a relationship and was hospitalized in Canada. Her mother, who was in England, came over and said, "I want you to write down everything that this guy did to you. Just write it down." She took pictures of her and write down everything. And she said, "And I'm here for you. And if you go back, I'm going to show you the pictures of you and I'm going to show you this letter. But if you go back, it's your business." Because her own mother had been beaten. And so there's family legacies and so on. So you need a reality check. I think we're in a better place than we've ever been in human history, because finally, therapists are understanding the dynamic. They're understanding that insight psychotherapy is not working, that this is not denial on their part. They do it because it works. They're fighting for position. They are a cat with a mouse. They get excited about diddling with the mouse. They get very excited. I mean, it's a terrible thing. They do not have compassion that you have. You've got your empathy, and then you have the added burden of the empathy that they should have, but they don't. So you got enough empathy for two people.
Right.
And so you need to have a support system. George Simon said when he first began to teach this to therapists 25 years ago, they would leave the room. Half of them would leave the room. They couldn't believe it, because they're going into therapy. They want to become therapists to help people and to heal their own inner child, right?
Right.
And it doesn't, so they didn't want to hear it. They believed the old Freudian thing, that the people act like this because they're in denial about their childhood pain. Or that mantra is, only hurt people hurt people. That's the belief. And that's what I've gotten for blowback on Facebook. They act like they do because they've been hurt in childhood. Turns out that is not true. It is not true. They are not in denial at all. Not at all.
What makes you say that?
That's the data. No, here's denial.
Yeah.
You're out walking with your husband of 40 years.
Yep.
He drops dead of a stroke, or he has a stroke. He's still breathing. You go to the hospital. 10 minutes ago, the two of you were on a walk. You're with the love of your life. You're maybe thinking about what kind of geraniums you're going to plant. Next thing you know, you are in the intensive care unit and he's on life support. And the nurses are telling you, he can't hear you. He is brain dead. And you sit there holding his hand, certain that he can hear you. You are in a defense mechanism known as denial. You are denying that he is dead because that is protecting your psyche. The people who are manipulating you know what they're doing. And so when Dr. Simon talks to them and calls them at, okay, it's like this, okay? She pissed me off. She made me do it. And then Dr. Simon will say, really? Did she go into your head, into your motor cortex and lift up your arm? And they go, well, no, right? He has an ability that I don't have. With extraordinary compassion, he calls them on their shit. And so if you read In Sheep's Clothing or Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Time, he will give the dialogue that he goes through with these characters. But I do not want empaths to get into this because it's another tool where they think they have to figure out what to say. And that's what we're already doing too much of, trying to figure out how to help them. Our job is to help us.
Oh my God. It sounds like just getting into like an endless maze.
And it is. And it is. So you've got to go to a therapist who understands this. And, should you go to Al-Anon? Should you go to CODA? Should you, this is not the same as being codependent or being with an alcoholic. However, the 12 steps of the 12-step program are the key spiritual principles of all time. So they do work. One, we admitted we were powerless over the behavior of the energy vampire and our response to it. Two, came to believe a power greater than ourselves, that's the divine part of ourselves, it's across the veil and not in a human body, would restore us to sanity. Three, turned our life over to that power. Four, did a fearless moral inventory, and agreed to make amends to those people we've hurt. And that's one thing that I talked about in a podcast I did with my daughter, Kate, and her husband, Mike, which was make amends, because there have been energy vampires in my life who I sided with and threw my kids under the bus. Now, in subtle ways. I mean, I never did, but still, I invalidated their responses because I was in cahoots with the energy vampire who, like all energy vampires, was trying to split me from my family and my children so that this person could get me all, to herself.
Right.
That's the common tactic. When you look at the Rajneesh thing or any cult, when they try to separate you from your family, then it's a red flag. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a heavy subject, but now, I can really laugh at it because I know how these people operate, and I know that freedom and laughter and all of that is where we're really supposed to be. We're not supposed to be a snack for vampires.
A snack. I love that. I will not be a snack.
That's right. That's right.
So in wrapping up, do you have any last words of wisdom in general, either on this topic or anything in the broad spectrum of you-ness that you find yourself often repeating to people?
Yes. Because people get very, very upset about the current political situation and the world situation. So here's what I want everyone to know.
Lovely.
Energy vampires have been in power for about 5,000 years, which is why the planet is in the state she's in. However, every indigenous culture has pointed to December 21st, 2012, as the turning point after which there would be no more war because the planet is in ascension and the light is winning. And if we made it past 2012, we would be on the trajectory of moving into the new age, the age of enlightenment. We're at the last little bit of the incision and drainage of the abscess. So it looks to the mainstream media, which has been infiltrated by the dark forces. You just look at Stephen Greer's Unacknowledged. All the mainstream media is beating the drum of negativity because darkness is losing. So they're just up in it to keep you afraid. That's narcissistic supply. That's their food, to keep things as they have been.
Right.
So please remember that the pus is coming out of the abscess, but underneath is granulation tissue, which is healthy, new, pink tissue, blood vessels, and so on. And that's coming up from underneath. And that's what's happening. You have your company. I have my company. All these gorgeous women-owned companies, men who are doing incredible organic farming. The consciousness of the planet has never been higher. The light is winning, and we are going to change that. And it happens. How fast will it happen? It happens as fast as you are willing to ditch the darkness and wake up.
Love it. And go dancing.
That's right. That's right. Or laughing, or whatever it is you do, or playing with the 2.5-year-old. All the things you've been told. Oh my God, that's a waste of time. That's frivolous. You shouldn't do that. What do you mean those flower essences you're taking are helping you? How could that happen? There's nothing in there. How stupid are you? And then you look at them and you laugh.
Oh my goodness. It's such a joy and pleasure to have you on the Flower Lounge. Thank you so much for taking this time, especially on your book launch day. It's been so dear to spend time with you.
Thank you, Katie. It's great.
And for any of you who are in the Chicago area in June, on the 15th, we'll be doing a flower lounge and a flower flash mob on the 16th. So hope to see you there in person. And thank you again for listening to the Flower Lounge. Thank you so much for listening to the Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard, or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.